Good morning, everyone. Boker Tov. It's nice to see so many faces today, which is a tribute to our speaker. I know many of you that were here enjoyed hearing Casey Eagle's speaker last time. This is the fourth in the series this year of the Little Fader Interfaith Scholar in Residence program that's devoted to Aboriginal culture and First Nations spirituality. So we are very pleased to invite Casey back to talk about Native spirituality. Just one or two comments probably that we didn't include last time. I just want to note that he's quite distinguished in his work and in his community efforts. Casey was awarded the Chief David Crowchild Award from the City of Calgary for his work in cross-cultural awareness, and also the Dr. Joseph Crowshoe Award from the University of Calgary for his work in Aboriginal education. So he sits on a number of boards and works professionally with Hull Services for the past 16 years as the Aboriginal Resource Coordinator. So it's a pleasure again, Casey, to welcome you.
Okay, good morning, my traditional name is Sorrelhorse, member of the Blood Tribe, part of Black Confederation. That was the introduction to my traditional language. And our belief is that we all are individual, unique, one-of-a-kind human beings. And in that fashion, our people have always had names. We call them traditional names, other people call them spiritual names, but they are traditional names and they're earned throughout your life. We end up with 4 minimum throughout our journey through life. And that distinguishes us as to the accomplishment that an individual makes. But we believe that the Creator will recognize us when we have that traditional name, that unique, one-of-a-kind being. And I think when we look at that, we look at our lives in that same fashion, that a lifetime is just a one-day event. Yesterday is just a memory, tomorrow is hope. But the Creator all gifted us the gift of life this morning. And when we realize that we are one of a kind, that none of us in here can be replaced, and that includes our families, friends, and relatives. And that's something that we learn to appreciate all people. Despite the choices they make in life, we don't always have to like their choices, but appreciate that they're still with us. Because once they move over into the spirit world, there is no return. And for us, going home is when you do enter the spirit home. And that is home. So we have ceremonies around going home. What we call home here is actually a temporary setting for all human beings. Ultimately, we all go back to our Mother Earth. But I was asked to do a quick review about what I covered last month when we talked around the issues of the residential school and the restrictive policies, especially the residential school, which had the greatest impact and most damage done to the Indigenous people of Canada. And you're going to hear me using the word Indigenous peoples more often because the literature is going to change. Aboriginal is something, as we say, is quite offensive. When you break it down to being ab and original, it means that we are not original, but we are the Indigenous peoples of North America. The latest DNA studies that came out in October of 2014 has proven that our DNA is unique to North America, which actually goes back to what we say that the Blackfoot Confederation, for an example, were mountain dwellers and moved out onto the Great Plains 13,000 years ago. So we have stories going that far back. So for those who weren't here, the residential school originally started in 1620, and it ran for 60 years. New France had started that policy, thinking that if they can take young Iroquois people, youth, shipping them off to France to introduce them into the French culture and then bring them back and put them in amongst their community, that they would then transform the cultures of the Indigenous peoples. And found out after 16 years that that was not working, that the young people were being reabsorbed back into their traditional cultures. So they stopped the practice in 1680. In 1858, the United States government reintroduced the residential school. In 1859, the Canadian government followed suit, taking young Aboriginal people and bringing them to residential schools. In 1920, it became mandatory that any child aged 5 to 16, was to be placed into residential schools against the will of the parents. It was a way of the federal government, through Sir John A. Macdonald, Duncan Campbell Scott, who said that they had to get rid of the Indian problem. Today, people still don't know what the Indian problem was because Indians do not exist in this country. There are 624 First Nations across the country, not counting Métis settlements and communities, Inuit villages, or the numbered reserves in BC. When you add that all in, we are numbering over 2,000 unique, identifiable cultural groupings of peoples. So when people try to think of, when they consider the word Aboriginal culture, they tend to think of one culture. It is a kaleidoscope of cultures. It's what makes up the North American continent. When you add in the U.S. part of it, then we're numbering close to 4,000 unique cultural groupings of people. In 1920, residential schools became mandatory. At the same time, it was also deemed that the Aboriginal people, as they call them, or the Indians, would not be allotted or allowed to pursue any further education after release from residential schools, whether you was grade 8 or age 16, whichever came first. The majority of the fact is that we had to learn more about farming, ranching, and homemaking techniques. A lot of industrial teachings, but very little academia. At the very outset, the majority of our people came out with first and second grade education at best. After that, it was actually illegal for Indigenous people to pursue any further education. It was also deemed that in the late 20s, the first White Paper policy actually came out because of the treaty or the Land Act that came out in 1896, which stated that if you are an Indian, that the land you live on, that you will not be allowed to work those lands ever again. That if you pursue any further employment outside of that, then you will be imprisoned, possibly enculturized for that being illegal now. In return, that every member of your family would receive a monthly relief check to the paternal system. It would go to the head of the household. We are societies, our peoples are a maternalistic society. So it was quite new to us. So we had two things. It was illegal to raise our children, illegal for us to have education, and illegal for us to have employment. It was also deemed that the Indigenous people could not leave the boundaries of their reserve unless they had a written permission from 24 to 72 hours maximum by the Indian agent at the Indian agent's discretion. These became a part of that whole scenario. Up until 1960, the Indigenous people of Canada were not considered citizens of Canada, considered immigrants within their own lands, and it was only in 1960 that we actually received the rights and became citizens of Canada and had the rights to vote by 1961. We also did not have the rights to have legal representation in the courts until 1970. The reason why a lot of the institutions, prisons, and jails are about 90% Indigenous people is because of that law back in those days. Education was allowed to us in 1956 that we can pursue that. These are things that we are considering. We look at a lot of different other dates. I could probably download you with all kinds of dates of restrictive and oppressive policies. We were not allowed to buy property off reserve. That did not change until 1987, that we could have property off reserve. We were not allowed to be part of the Canadian Human Rights Act. Article 67, prior to the amendments made to the Canadian Human Rights Act, Article 67 was a very glaring component for us to read. After reading the other 66 articles about being able to have the human rights under the Act itself, Article 67 stated that if you are an Indian descent, Métis or Inuit, then none of the above pertains to you. That was true of our people. In June of 2014, the federal government finally adopted and accepted the Indigenous Human Rights Act that the United Nations had put forth, stating some very clear articles in there. First, that we be allotted and allowed, and it's encouraged, that we are to practice our language, to maintain our culture and our ceremonies. So that's very recent for us. When the ceremonies were outlawed in 1923, a lot of our ceremonies went underground and were hidden from the federal government. If you go further north, some of the ceremonies like sweat lodges were sheltered because of the Air Patrol. The Blackfoot Confederation, or the Bloods, my tribe, basically denied all of that and blatantly ran their ceremonies out in the open, challenging the federal government. Our ceremonies are still maintained from very old teachings, handed down from one generation to the next, and we are not allowed to add or delete or modify any of the ceremonies. Our belief is that's what the Creator had provided us, 4 basic things that He had provided, and the stories that go with that was the act of, or the practice of smudging, using sage and sweetgrass. Now, sage has been studied by scientists to prove that it is and does neutralize the negative energy of an individual at that time. And they've also studied sweetgrass and realized that it does actually purify that person for that moment. We smudge before we pray. In our words, we are going to be cleansed before we can talk to the Creator. We must remove all those negative aspects that we might be carrying. When we look at anything we do in life, in our people, we are really trying to reestablish ourselves within the community and saying that we have something to offer. Spiritual practices are part of that. And I will use the word native spirituality. And to tell you, we're going to find out what the truth is around native spirituality. If I was to ask you, what do you think native spirituality is? Anybody care to pop on an answer?
A way of praying.
A way of praying? Anybody else?
Connection to Mother Earth.
Yeah, and that's probably the closest answer. Native spirituality is a way of life. It's not a religion. But within that way of life, we have our spiritual practices. What we do in ceremony is not a religion. It is a spiritual practice. Our connection to the earth and everything that's in it. For us, everything out there is animate, sacred, has a spirit, and is very much alive. Even a simple pebble that you might step on has significant meaning to all of us. In a society that I run a Sundance, my brother and I run a Sundance, we teach the people that join the Sundance who become carriers of the pipes that they are responsible for everything that sun touches on a daily basis. That is their responsibility, as well as all human beings. And that's very critical to us. So when we say that, yes, we are created in the image of our Creator as human beings. And it's not the body, but the spirit within us, because the Creator is a great spirit. And it's a piece that our Creator's spirit that exists in all people. It has no color, it has no gender. The body, on the other hand, is a gift from our Mother Earth, and it will go back to her. And it's built similar to her. The hair in your body is to represent the sweetgrass that does grow in the prairies. Your skeleton and your bones represent the mountains and rocks used in ceremonies like a sweat lodge. Your arteries, veins, and vessels, these are your rivers, streams, and creeks. Your heart will pulsate just like the core of a mother does. The rivers, your tears represent the waters. Your arteries, veins, and vessels, these do represent the rivers, streams, and creeks that carry that life-giving force. Your breath is to symbolize the wind. And the shade of shell you carry is like our mother's shell, our mother the earth. White and gold sands, brown and black soils, just 4 different shades of brown. And we teach that very openly to our children, our grandchildren, great-grandchildren, other generations, as well as our adults today, to allow them to realize that there are no such thing as a white man, a black man, a red man, or a yellow man. that our first and true identity is just being a human being first. That is what we truly are. Our sense of belonging is knowing our cultural grouping of people that we come from, that we belong to them and they belong to us, but there is no ownership. In the same way that we look at life and in relationship between man and woman. I don't own my wife and she does not own me. We do not own our children. They don't own us. We just belong to each other. And that's the best it can be. And then even in our words, we don't have words like love or healing. Healing is an absolute in our beliefs. And because we are human beings, we're imperfect beings. So healing can never be absolute for any one of us. But the way we say it, when they are being doctored, they're just going into a state of well-being for the day. And that's what we look at, just to give you in a state of well-being. That even in society, we do not call doctors healers. We do call them doctors. And that's what we call our people. Although Hollywood has called them medicine men or medicine women, but they are really, in our term, doctors. And there's no boundaries as who can be a doctor. It's ones who understand our Mother the Earth, the plants and medicines that she has to offer, and what she has to bring forth. As we say that if our bodies came from the earth, then what she has to offer us is designed for the body. And that's something that we truly believe in. Each of you, in our belief, is your own spiritual authority on how you believe and call upon the Creator. And that is to be respected. Our ceremony is open to all people, regardless of race, creed, color, religion, or spiritual groupings. Everybody has a basic right to call upon a Creator at any point in time on any given day. And we do a lot of things for granted that we keep our young children alert to. So if I was to ask the gentleman there, what's the first thing you did this morning when you got out of bed?
I took a shower.
Okay, what else did you do after that?
Had breakfast.
Had breakfast, okay. What did you do this morning? Yes, you.
At some point, I'm grateful for the day.
Okay, so anybody else, when you first got up this morning, what did you do?
Grateful I got up.
Yeah. So, and yes.
Went to the bathroom.
Okay. Okay. Yes.
I do a ritual cleansing of my hands and then had immediately after that caffeine.
Oh, okay. So, and even in those statements, we took something for granted. If we really take the reality, they did all this thing in their nakedness.
We got out of bed.
They got out of bed, but they had their shower, and he said he had his breakfast. Not once did he mention that he actually got dressed. Yeah, and we do that in life, that there's things that we take for granted. We take it for granted that the sun's going to rise for us tomorrow. We take it for granted that we're going to witness the sun setting. We take it for granted that our children and grandchildren, our relatives and friends will still be with us by tomorrow. It's not an idea to have fatal thoughts, but to really understand the gift of life. Our ceremonies are designed to celebrate life. For us, death is not something final. That is the doorway to our Creator, entering and going home, to rejoin our Creator. So death for us is just another stage of life itself. For us, death is not something final. Death is just the beginning of your true being, the spirit within you. And that's something we truly believe in. You can never kill the spirit of a human being. If we look at ourselves collectively in all that we have gone through, we are still here. Our beliefs, our values of what our spirit carries has brought us to this point in life. If we look at the Holocaust of your ancestors, if their spirit had died, you would not be here. I look at the Holocaust of my people, the cultural genocide that the Supreme Court called residential schools. If our spirit of our people had died, I wouldn't be here. So it is very true what we say. And despite all that we have gone through, and I look at the residential school and we say that in the beginning, 40% of all children who walked through the doors of residential school at the beginning died within the first 6 months. That wasn't a natural part of what we understood. And yet our people were held helpless. Intergenerational trauma is what our people have suffered from contact to the present day. And that's something we understood. And we're beginning to understand how to work with it. And ceremonies become a huge part of that. The first ritual I do in the morning is to light that smudge and pray and call the Creator and say, thank you for this gift. And I ask for your guidance and to give me strength to go through this journey today. For I do not know what that life has to offer me today. But to allow me the courage and the bravery to go forth. That I cannot allow just bravery to be my one guiding strength. I cannot allow courage to be just my one guiding strength. I need a combination of both. I need to be able to go out there and see the people and greet the people. None of you are strangers to me. We're all friends. We just haven't met yet. That is a belief that we have. Not to treat people as strangers. They are friends. You just haven't met each other. But when that moment happens, then does that relationship begin to flourish. It is a belief that we have that we are walking together as brothers and sisters. We all come from one God. We want to call him a God. We call him Creator. Some call him Great Spirit. They're all different types of names, but it's still just one being. A spirit that guides us. I hear higher power at times, but oftentimes I will hear the word Great Spirit. And I've heard that from all different types of religion, all types of spiritual groupings who've all come to that one term. And I think when we really allow ourselves to understand that's a humanness in all of us, that we have a belief within us. But in order to have faith that there is a Creator, you must have faith within you. Because that spirit within you is a piece of the Creator, and you got to develop that faith within you. You got to believe in that trust within yourself. You have to know who you are as a human being, that you have this gift that no other human being has. You know, when the Creator was going to put the two-legged being upon the earth, he gathered all the animals and had a great council. He said, I'm going to put a two-legged here with you, and I'm going to call him a human being. But they're going to be very weak to the rest of you. And I need you to be able to give him a gift. So all the animals gathered. And the great buffalo came forward. He said, I'll give the human beings my whole being. They can take my flesh and use that for food. They can take my bones and use it for tools. They can take my hide and use it for shelter and clothing. The Creator was very happy with that. So when the buffalo sacrificed himself to the people, the Creator took a piece of the buffalo hair and put it on a drop of blood where the buffalo stood. And the buffalo came back and they said, from this day forward you will multiply along with the human beings. And that cycle will always be continuous. And then he sat there for a while and he said, I also need to give him a gift now. So the animals continued in council. And the great buffalo came forward first again. He said, Creator, that gift you want to give him, are you willing to hide that? And he says, that's exactly what I'm asking. I want to hide this gift because I don't want the human beings to find it too soon. Otherwise, they're not going to know how to use it, and they're going to only hurt themselves and their people. So the great buffalo said, then I'll take that gift, now go hide it in the deep grass. They say grass was tall as man at the time. And said, or I can hide it in the buffalo wells where I roll. They'll never find that gift there. And the great creators, that's a great idea. But these human beings are going to be intelligent. Someday they're going to create machines that are going to cut that tall grass down. Other machine that's going to turn that soil over, and they may uncover that gift and not know how to use it and hurt themselves and their people. So the buffalo went back into the council. In the meantime, the mouse was trying to get his voice to be heard. And they ignored him. The great bear came out and said, Creator, I'll take that gift, and I'll take it deep into the mountains, and I'll hide in the deepest caves. These human beings will never find that gift there. And the Creator said, that is another excellent idea. But again, you underestimate the intelligence of the human beings. Someday they will create a machine that's going to drill holes through the mountain. And someday they're going to tear down whole mountains, and again may find that gift, not know how to use it, hurt their people and themselves. So the bear went back in the council. The great salmon came forward. He said, Creator, I'll take that gift. And I'll go hide it up in the rivers, up the streams, or better yet, I'll take it out to the ocean. I'll drop it off at the deepest part of the ocean. These human beings will never find that gift there. And the Creator said, that is another great idea. But again, these human beings are going to create crafts to be able to travel up the rivers, travel the oceans, and have machines that can search the depths of the oceans. And again, may find that gift too soon, hurt themselves and their people with it. Then the eagle came forward. Said, Creator, I'll take that gift, and I'll take it into the clouds, or better yet, I'll take it into the furthest stars, I'll hide it amongst the stars. These human beings will never find that gift there. Creator said, that is another excellent idea. But again, these humans are going to create crafts to be able to travel through the clouds and to the furthest stars. And again, they may find that gift too soon and only hurt themselves and their people. As the eagle went back into the council, the mouse ran up the Creator's arm and whispered into the Creator's ear. The Creator started laughing. And the animals came around him and said, Creator, why do you laugh? What has our little brother, the mouse, taught you? He said, first off, the mouse has taught me something, never to ignore the smallest creature or the smallest voice. But he also told me where to hide the gift, where the human beings will never look until they're truly ready, and that's within inside themselves. These are things that we teach our children, that even their voice is extremely important today, because their voice comes from a place of purity. We as adults have learned how to sin. We have created a lot of mistakes. The young child is just beginning a journey, so that voice of purity is important for us to listen to. They become part of that. Our worldview is through the eyes of our children, not through the eyes of adults. Our children do not see distinguishing people by race or by color. They see each other as human beings. And that is the vision that we have. And we follow that because tomorrow belongs to our children. It does not belong to me, it belongs to my children. That is their future. I'm only here to help set the foundation for their journey. So everything we do in life is always set for our children. They're too important to us. We don't own them, but we will guide them down that path. But I cannot choose for them either. I can only give that guiding word. And when they are successful in their journey, I always applaud them for the effort that they gave. I will never take credit for their successes because that is their journey. And our ceremonies go around that and saying this is what we have. It's that interconnectedness of all people. And you realize a healthy human being is very open-minded with a very open heart when they have more than 150 individual people that they connect with. It keeps a healthy mind. That's something that we have understood. That the more people I know and greet, the more people that I intermingle with, that your mind will stay alert and alive and well. And it makes your life worth living. So if you ever think about that, and you really want to freshen your mind up, allow yourself to explore and find 150 people. Get to know who they are. You'd be amazed as to what your mind can do and how uplifting it is for your spirit that you are creating this. Wealth is not in the financial world. Wealth is within the family. In fact, I'm going to show you how we look at that in a spiritual sense. What society may deem as family and traditional families of the indigenous peoples. So I'm going to be asking you a question of what do you think might make up a family? Anyone? Who's all in the family?
Blood relatives.
Okay, like, so we take a look at that and say, what would society, okay, who makes up this family in here in society?
Father, mother,
Okay, so
children.
mom and dad,
Children and siblings.
Grandparents. Aunts, uncles.
Cousins.
Brothers and sisters. Ancestors.
what's that?
Ancestors.
So, yeah, well, I'm just looking at the family right now.
Grandparents.
We'll get them in there.
If you're lucky, great-grandparents.
Okay, well, we'll just put a star there.
Beyond the organic family, like friendships.
Yeah.
In-laws.
Family.
In-laws? Okay.
What do you say?
In-laws.
Community.
The community?
Teachers.
Hmm?
Teachers.
Teachers? What's that? Colleagues? Anybody else?
Pets.
Pets?
Animals.
Okay. Anything missing in there?
Yourself?
Okay, we'll put self in there. How many of you are aunts and uncles?
How many are what?
How many of you are aunts and uncles? So, what makes you an aunt and uncle?
Your nieces and nephews.
Nieces and nephews, okay. How many are grandparents? And what makes you that?
Grandchildren.
Grandchildren. Do you know that in all the years that I've provided this, those seem to be the two that most people
Grandchildren.
leave out?
Great-grandchildren.
Yeah, that comes in. Okay, we'll use that for now. And we're going to look at the indigenous people's traditional family. So for us, we'll have our grandparents. We'll have mom and dad. We have our brothers and sisters. We have our grandchildren. And that's where we stop. Anybody care to ask why that might be?
What about cousins?
My cousins are my brothers and sisters. My nieces and nephews are my children. My aunts and uncles are my older brothers and sisters, and as they gain more wisdom, become my parents as well. As they go later into latter life, they become my grandparents. Grandchildren are the same thing. So in our world, most people have a set of parents. In the world I come from, today I have 41 sets of parents. Grandparents, I probably have over 100 set of grandparents. Brothers and sisters, number in the thousands. Children are also in the thousands. It's a way of life, of looking at spirituality from a vast mode. In-laws are to be respected at the same level as grandparents, that our word. If I say Nasiks, that's my grandparents. If I look at my in-laws, Nasiks. They're to be respected at that same level because of the life knowledge that they carry, the life experiences. And that's something that we search out for to understand what their journey was like, so that I can understand the journey I'm setting myself upon. This is what society is now beginning to come across, that yes, it is happening to all of us. That we are coming about and saying, if this is what is true, and for us this is a very true way of doing things, that my friends have become my brothers and sisters. We adopt each other in that same fashion. When we look at kinship care, there is no legal documents. It is a traditional law. We follow natural laws, and our natural laws are common across the world, around this globe of ours. What makes us different is the traditional laws that come from that natural law. Our family structures, in all family structures, we look at the animals for that. A wolf, male and female, spend equal amounts of time with their pups. It's not one less than the other or more than the other. The eagle represents relationships, a trust of faith within each other. And if you ever witness the mating ritual of eagles, you'd be amazed at what that's like. I don't know if any of you ever witnessed the mating ritual of eagles. If you ever get the opportunity to go in the mountains and see that this spring, you might be surprised. They will actually lack talons and have a free fall. And just before they hit the ground, they release their hold on each other. And they trust each other that each is going to let go. And those two will develop the trust with each other, and they mate for life. They're very monogamous. So that is a true test of faith. I mean, I don't think two human beings can do that, to lock hands and jump off a building and say, oh, let go at the same time. But to understand the essence of faith, so that jealousy does not come into the picture. Unfaithfulness does not come into the picture. But a true testament that you have a devotion to each other. You know, even with my journey with my wife and saying from a spiritual aspect, in Blackfoot, I don't have a word that says love. I have a word that says chikakomim. Sounds very simple. But the translation is that I have chosen her to walk my journey in life with, as she has chosen me. And together we will be the legs of our marriage, as we each take one step forward, each putting each other in front of the other, never below. So we share everything in life. And that is something very sacred to us, that we wake up together and we bed down together. But we will walk through life together today. That every time I leave my home and I see her again when I come back home, I greet her like I haven't seen her for months, because I'm celebrating that she's still with me today. That's why in our culture, that when we greet people, I might meet Rabbi Saul and shook his hand when I first hit the door, say I might meet him again this afternoon and do the same thing, and greet him like I hadn't seen him before. Because I'm celebrating life. A simple handshake for us is a celebration of life. It's accepting of each other. We have certain beliefs that we also look at in many different fashions. But we're all human beings, and we all have something to offer. And there are times that we are challenged as to what we can offer and feel that we have not done enough. And how many have ever been to that point? So maybe the story of the hummingbird would help you understand that. They say a great fire broke out, a raging forest fire. The owl, the bear, and the wolf stood guard to make sure all forms of life would escape this massive fire when they noticed the hummingbird going to a lake and going back with a drop of water. And was doing so the wolf tried to stop the hummingbird, but the hummingbird went above the wolf. They watched him for a couple more hours, and the bear tried to stop the hummingbird, and again the hummingbird was able to fly around the bear and continued its quest of one drop of water from the lake into the fire. It was not until the owl was able to stop and intercept the flight of the hummingbird and told him to come for a moment. They had a question. Hummingbirds floated there for a while and said, "What is it you ask me?" He says, "Well, my brother the bear, my brother have watched you all day, taking one drop of water and taking it into the fire. And it seems so hopeless of what you're doing because the fire itself is so massive. We want to know why you're doing it." The hummingbird looked at him and said, "I'm only doing what I can," and then continued his quest. If we all put one drop of water into a bucket, we could fill it. And that's something that's really critical in what we do in life. As an individual human being, you are that drop of water. Never allow yourself to feel that you don't do enough. You're only doing what you can. And when we see that, and the Creator sees that, and the witness for the Creator is the Son, and we see that in our beliefs that we only do critical meetings when the sun is out, so He can witness our words and our actions. We don't do any serious meetings at night when the sun's not out. That's a time of storytelling, not a time of critical meetings. As we say, you speak your truth when the witness of the Creator is out. You're not allowed to lie because lies were never good enough for a human being, only the truth. And that's very important to us. I'm going to ask you a question. I'm not to offend you, but I just want to ask you a question. I asked you in the corner of the red sweater, what cultural grouping of people do you come from?
Jewish.
Jewish? Well, you know, there's this Jewish man who had never flown before. Sitting in Calgary, he was wanting to fly down to Miami, Florida. So he called up the airport and says, "Ma'am, I want to fly to Miami, but I've never flown before, and I want to know how long it takes to fly to Miami." They said, "Well, just a minute." And he said, "Oh, thank you," and then hung up. So maybe the women can answer this one then. What do you call twins? No. No. Well, we call them womb mates. Yeah, womb mates. If you look at healing, if we want to use the word healing, but a state of well-being is the ability to allow tears to flow and to allow laughter be a part of your life. Those are two great healing processes. Tears should never be withheld. Although men have been taught through the ages that men don't cry, the true strength of men is through their tears. When a man allows themselves to cry, they are showing immense strength because they are now starting to connect with their emotional being. And that is a learning process for men. Between man and woman, we believe that women are stronger than men spiritually. They have a stronger connection and better understanding of life itself than men do. Men don't have that quality. That's why when you look at wars, it always seems to be the men that are out there, because they don't have that true value of life. In the Indigenous values, we are taught to value all forms of life. It is not our right to take another human being's life. That even when we hunt, we are also taught which animals that we are allowed to hunt. We don't go out there looking for prize bucks and bulls. We look for the weak bucks and the weak bulls. We don't look for the fertile cows and those. We look for the dry ones. And there are certain signs that they show you. These are the food sources, but never to overtake what you need. And that what you take, you share. That's why in the Indigenous ways of life, we do not have very strong materialistic values. I can't take what I have with me in a materialistic form back home to the Creator. So when we receive something, we share it openly. We give to those who may be less fortunate. I'll look for elders who are needing some help. So when I go hunting, the first thing I do is search after I cured the game, and I butcher it and get it packaged. Then I go to the elders first, getting them ready and preparing them for the winter months. Then I'll go to the families who have very little to do with. In the last hunt, I was allowed to have 7 elk. And when I got done sharing all that out, I had 1 steak left for my family. And for me, that was very rewarding. My family understands that. They understand that we are giving and sharing that. There's 4 important gifts that we all have to understand. Food, water, air, and the sun are life-giving forces. And we must respect them at every level, because too little of any one of those or too much of any one of those can also end life. They must be maintained in equal proportion of each. And that's something that's very important to us. So we add everything into a spirituality that even humor becomes a part of it. And we start looking at all that. So does anybody here have running water? You do? Can you send her home? I haven't seen her in a few days. No. So when we look at that, we look at all different forms. We have a pipe. People have nicknamed them peace pipes. They're not peace pipes. They are sacred instruments. The stone of the pipe is to represent woman, because woman is the strength of a family. They are the backbone to their family. They are the backbone to their community and to society as a whole. The Rocky Mountain Range we call the backbone of our mother, because it runs the full length of North and South America. It just changes names. It is the backbone of our mother, the earth. The wood that we use on the stem of the pipe represents man. That wood is to symbolize honesty. That when you join the two together of having strength and honesty within the being, it creates great power. It creates that communication link between the Creator and the people. This is something that we strongly believe in. The tobacco that we put in there, the tobacco I use is nothing of the manufactured tobacco because of all the carcinogens and poisons they put into it. Mine is all natural herbs and medicines that I put into the pipe. And we respect the tobacco in that fashion because it's also a symbol of our mother's hair. That anything we do in life, even picking a simple flower, it's just a simple matter of having tobacco and asking for forgiveness and telling the Creator and our Mother Earth, I'm going to take one of your children that for every one I take, that 2 may grow back in its place. And I'll put that into our mother, into the soil, before I even pick a flower. Whether it's berries, fruits, anything we do, there's always that reciprocal part of it, that tobacco becomes a part of that. It's an offering of forgiveness. It's also an offering of service. Basically, tobacco has many symbolic gestures. If this was tobacco, and Rabbi Shaul came up to me and requested a sweat lodge, that's what he would offer is tobacco. I'm offering you tobacco to have a sweat lodge for the people. He would tell me the reasons for that. Then I would accept that tobacco. Once I accept that tobacco, I'm bound by that tobacco because that is a contract for me. I am not allowed to break that for any reason. I cannot postpone or cancel that ceremony for any reason other than the fact that unless it was my time to go home to the Creator. That is the only way. But I don't have that option. That tobacco is very binding for our people when we use tobacco for that purpose. We respect that because we're going to take that tobacco. I'll take that tobacco and I'll make prayer flags and tobacco ties. I'll make offerings to pray for the people that are going to be attending that ceremony. I'll pray for Rabbi Shaul for offering that tobacco for him and his family. So I go into another ceremony with that. I have to do that. I need to do that. It's something that is just within us that say, I need to be able to give back at some capacity. And we do make sacrifices in our way of life. When we do our sun dances, everything we do in ceremony, our spring fast is coming, it's an absolute fast for 4 days. It's a lot of work and prayer, but it's without food and water for 4 days. There's a sweat lodge ceremony all 4 days, so we're really pulling everything that we can possibly get out of a human being to get him into a state of what we call holiness. That their prayers become more powerful for the people. The sun dance is the same thing. There's 4 days of hard work and preparation for the ceremony. And when the ceremony begins, they're going to fast for 4 days. And some of the men, or all the men, are preparing themselves for the piercing. Some will be pierced on the first day and be attached to the tree of life for 4 days. Some of the women might choose to pierce and will pierce them on the shoulders. And some will keep them in for 4 days. It may sound barbaric. The piercing sun dance that I run is a very old ceremony. And I'll give you that story of that after we take a break, but I'm going to tell you what it's all about. When a man decides that they're going to sun dance, it has to be for a very good purpose, a good reason. For the well-being of their family, or people in general, or somebody that's quite ill. And they'll tell the Creator, I will pierce and dance for the healing of my loved one, or for the people. And then they'll have a dream that whether they're going to pierce on the first, the second, or the fourth day. When I did my dance, I did the warrior piercing, because that was the dream I had. I was dancing for people I was working with. I was dancing for sick children and youth that I saw. Ones who are lost in the world of alcohol and drugs and suicidal thoughts. I wanted them to live, so I sacrificed for that. When we are pierced, we're pierced upon the chest, and sticks probably about this thick, or bone, buffalo bone, a little thicker than that, and that's pushed into the chest. Our tree of life, a cottonwood that we cut down, it has a Y. When we cut that tree down, we can't allow the tree to hit the ground, but you also can't have machinery to take it down. You have to chop it down by hand and catch it by hand. So the men, the sun dancers, catch the tree when it comes down. The whole ceremony with that. And at no time have I ever seen a tree go any faster than this coming down during ceremony. Away from ceremony, yeah, it'll topple right down. But in ceremony, there's something different. You could feel the energy that's there as a tree allows itself, because we believe that tree is now giving its life up for the people now. We take it back to our ceremonial grounds and we plant that into the ground in the middle of an arbor. There's pemmican that we put in there, buffalo meat and berries that we crush, and we put that on the base of the tree and put that into the ground because we want the tree to have strength for the 4 days. But the ropes are attached by the men. And on that 4th day, that first morning when they are pierced, and the ropes are attached to them, they are to dance there for 4 days. And they're not allowed to use their hands to touch the rope, but to use their body weight and pull back and allow that to stretch out there. It may sound painful, but when you're actually doing it for those reasons, that spiritual reasoning, there is no pain. It is actually a celebration. You're celebrating the accomplishment that you are fulfilling a commitment to the Creator for the people. You're giving yourself, you're giving of flesh and blood. And we'll dance from sunrise to sunset. We start them in the morning with a sweat lodge. At the end of the day, we also sweat lodge them again. Then they're allowed to rest. And if you're a warrior piercer, you have your bedroll. You can bring that out. The helpers help you bring your bedroll out. And you lay below the tree and you still have the ropes attached to you. Although there are a lot of slack in there by then. But that's where you stay for 4 days. You're being humbled. And understanding humility of just being a simple human being. Making a commitment to the Creator that you are doing this for people. There is no recognition or prestige in that. You're not allowed to groom yourself. So you go into that extreme state of humility. And you dance throughout the day that way. We also have a night dance for the warriors, where we'll make them dance at night for another 4 hours in the night. So they get very little rest in between there. The women, when they pierce, we don't pierce them on the chest. When they do choose to pierce, and it's not mandatory for them like it is for the men, but for them it's a piercing on the shoulder here. And the 6 are a little bit thinner than that, probably more about the thinness of this part of the microphone. And that's pushed in there with eagle feathers hanging off it, small ones. Some will dance for 4 days that way, and some will dance and choose to do that on the 4th day. And when they're ready to break, like the men are on the 4th day, the women will go first to break. They'll get family or friends or relatives that's going to be there. We bring them in through the south gate on a buffalo robe. And they'll put their hands and straddle a stick or bone, buffalo bone, on each side and pray. And at precisely the same moment, they must jerk it right through the skin, take it out of there, breaking it free. The women who've done that will tell you in their own words, it's a great feeling of exhilaration. But not once has any woman ever said they felt pain. The men will do the same thing. When it's time for them to break, they will dance the tree 4 times. On the 4th one, they'll go back, stretch the rope as far as they can, lean forward and throw their shoulders back and break, hopefully break free. They're allowed 4 chances to do that. If they don't break by the 4th one, then the men, the lead helpers, will then grab them by the shoulders and pull them off the ropes. The one that we do for deep healing is on the 3rd day, the dragging of the buffalo skulls. We use 14 buffalo skulls, so there's about 700 pounds of skulls that you're pierced on your back. And your ropes are attached to the buffalo skulls, and you drag that around the arbor maximum 4 times. You go around twice. Each time you get to rest. The 3rd time, the women sun dancers will throw their shawls on to add more weight to the skulls. If they still don't break and you go around the 4th time, then the men will sit on the skulls, and then you pull again. You must break free to fulfill a commitment. Although it sounds barbaric and sounds painful, it truly is not. We've had children who've gone out there and sun danced at the age of 9. We've had young boys go out there at the age of 9 and be pierced. Knowing what they were doing, I know one young boy who did that for his parents. He said, my mother's in the hospital with cancer, and my dad's on the street because he can't take what's going on with her. And I want to dance for the Creator to help heal my mother and to help my father get back home. He chose to dance with the ropes attached to him for 4 days. He succeeded. Before his second year of sun dancing came up, his mother's diagnosis came back saying that her cancer was in remission. His father was now in a treatment. A commitment for a sun dancer is 4 years. A fall fast, a spring fast, 4 days of preparation, 4 days of sun dancing. That young boy at the age 13, when he was finally done, his parents were both home, both healthy, both walking a good life. And he's still with us today, this young man. He's become one of our lead helpers off and on. He works at another Sundance, but he comes to help us once in a while. My grandson, who just turned 19, Sundanced when he was 14. He's now in training to become a new Sundance chief. He will take my role over when the time comes. He needs to learn all the medicines I have, the preparation of the medicines. He needs to know that ceremony from inside to outside and back and forth. He needs to know it backwards, forwards, sideways. He needs to know every facet of it. He also needs to know the songs that we have. We have 61 songs that we use for Sundance, and he needs to know every one of them. He needs to know the story of each song. He needs to know when certain songs are to be used for certain ceremonies, which songs are used for encouragement. Everything we do is in celebration. As we look at it, sundancing is not a time of suffering. Although they're sacrificing food, water, they are celebrating. The Sundance is our New Year's celebration. We find it ludicrous that New Year's is celebrated in the dead of winter, when most of life is gone to sleep. For us, celebrating a new year is when everything is flourishing, everything is alive. All the insects, flowers, plants, berries, everything is alive and vivid. The waters are flowing freely. That's the new year. Take a 10-minute break and we'll continue. Good. Good. Thank you.
Great. So, I don't know about all of you, but I've just been mesmerized for the last hour, listening and learning, and I can tell you from my perspective, this is exactly what this program's about. It's intended to really increase our religious literacy, our literacy of others, and so I'm off the chart on this morning's presentation. So look forward to this next half hour, and then we have to keep exploring what we're going to do next. So I already know the protocol for the sweat lodge. I've got to find tobacco, so I'm going to be working on that one soon. So we'll turn it back over to Casey.
So Rabbi Shalom has been talking in via email, actually. That's smokeless smoke signals. But he had mentioned possibly having a sweat lodge, and I told him that would be very much in a doable situation. I think we chose May 19th, which would be a Tuesday. So I'm going to go right in talking about the sweat lodge. The symbolism of the sweat lodge, what it really means. It is the oldest and the most important ceremony of all our ceremonies in this country. It starts everything and ends everything. Yes, the sun dances are a huge ceremony and very breathtaking for some. But still that little sweat lodge that begins everything. It is a place of healing for people. It's a safe place. The sweat lodge is to symbolize our mother's womb, from where we all come from. But the journey of the sweat lodge is important to understand. So I'll draw parts of the sweat lodge for you and what do we look at. Now, a sweat lodge, when it's being built, is always in a circular fashion. I go out and I will find willows. And I may find one batch of willows that'd be plenty for the sweat lodge, but I'm not going to take from just one batch. I'm going to be very choosy and go from different ones because I don't want to destroy the environment. It takes me at least 3 to 4 days to find 13 willows. For my sweat lodge, I use 16 because of the size of it, but 13 willows is the minimum I could use to put into the ground. Those represent the 13 moons in a year. It also represents the 13 moon cycles of a woman that a woman goes through in a year. And we call that moon cycles women. They're actually menstrual cycles, but we call them moon cycles. They have 13 years, so it symbolizes that. Because we come from our mother, the sweat lodge is to symbolize the womb of our mother. So that's what we start looking at. And then I use 14 ribs to go horizontal, to make 4 rings. And those to represent the ribs of the American buffalo, because we follow the buffalo for everything it stands for. It stands for determination, diligence, perseverance, and above all, patience for things to change. That we all have storms within us. It is one of only 2 animals in the world that would turn and walk back into a blizzard, knowing that if it does so, it can cut the duration of the storm in 2. So that's what we do. So the 14 ribs is to represent that, because this is the only buffalo in the world that has 14 ribs on both sides. All others have 13. So that's something that we look at. So when we look at that, we're looking at different protocols around the sweat lodge. There's a dress protocol for women. It's a gown, cotton or flannel, nothing white. Because I guarantee we don't want a wet t-shirt contest. Okay. But we do ask them to dress in a gown covering neck and shoulder line down to the ankles. If not, they can wear a dark t-shirt and a skirt and leggings. And at no time are women ever sit cross-legged. We have to maintain the highest level of respect for women. And men are understanding of that. Men can sit cross-legged, but women, because they bring the human being into the world, we respect that. So we have different protocols. As a sun dancers, men are never allowed to allow, not even their daughters, to cross over their legs. A man must make every effort to make sure that they're out of that passageway. They must allow that woman to do their duties. Whether it's a young girl or woman, that you never allow them to cross over your legs. You never make them make a detour. You clear the passage for a woman at all times. So there's a lot of different things that we don't even allow our women to cook during their moon cycles, because that is their time of cleansing, physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. We respect that to the highest level, so we don't allow them to cook. Men will take over for those 4 days and do all the cooking and preparation. They will do all the house cleaning and laundry. That's something that we look at and say, this is part of our humility. We have ceremonies that actually say that this is what we do. We will prepare the meals. We will serve the women and children first until they have had their fill. No man can eat until every woman is happy with what they have. Then do the men get to eat. And when the feast is over, the men are to clean everything and make sure everything's put away, and then the ceremony begins. We call it night lodge. So we honor women at the highest level, that even in my language, I cannot come up to a woman and say, "Uki napi." I cannot say hello my friend to a woman. That's very degrading.